So let's discuss cybercrime and cybersecurity in a different way. Let's look at the entire cyber ecosystem holistically and highlight the different levels of people, process, technology, and physical services that make up our entire cyber ecosystem. We all know that the internet is borderless. Its security problems are borderless, so any solution must be borderless. With the globalization of cybercrime, I'd like to focus on the 10 layers of the cyber ecosystem. I'd like to highlight the challenges we face, the stakeholders who govern the policies of the internet, the distributors who allocate IP resources for the internet, the routing providers who carry those IP resources, the last mile internet service providers who deliver IP resources to you and I, the recipients of those IP resources, the abusers, the adversaries or criminals of IP resources, the defenders of IP resources, the countermeasures those defenders employ and use, how we respond when IP resources are abused, and how security versus privacy is critical to the use of Internet Protocol resources. Before we go any further, let's stop. The views and opinions of this framework are simply that. The cyber ecosystem is simply a way for us to view the problem of cybercrime and cybersecurity more broadly. The openness of the internet allows for the globalization of cybercrime. It allows nation-state actors, terrorists, cybercriminals, or even someone sitting at home the ability to impact the world en masse. So let's look at a few examples of the current cyber threat landscape. Cybercriminals can reside in country A, have pre-positioned infrastructure in country B. Their victims or their targets can live or reside in country C. They stay connected through persistent activity through country D and launder their illicit funds and activities through country E. These cybercriminals take advantage of technology such as botnets, or proxy servers, or domain-generated algorithms. They also take advantage of IP resources which are sold in a wholesale manner, such as bandwidth, hosting, or domain resellers. Okay, let's get started and go through each layer of the cyber ecosystem, outlining the impact each layer has to viewing cybercrime and cybersecurity holistically. Let's begin with layer 1, the challenges of Internet Protocol resources. The cyber ecosystem touches nearly every aspect of our daily lives, from political, social, to economical, all heavily dependent on technology. The challenges of the digital environment are different from those of the physical world due to distance, proximity, anonymity, so therefore the rules and typical models for addressing these challenges simply do not work. The challenges could be of convenience, accountability, security, economical, trust, technical, privacy, or even transparency challenges. In layer 2 of the cyber ecosystem, the stakeholders' role is to oversee the huge and complex interconnected network of unique identifiers that allow computers on the internet to find one another. Leading the way is the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. ICANN's mission is to facilitate the openness, interoperability, resilience, security, and stability of DNS. The stakeholders coordinate the overall level of the internet, the management and allocation of domain names, Internet Protocol resources, autonomous systems, protocols, ports, and perimeters. The stakeholders govern universal resolvability, the domain name system, which helps users to find their way around the internet. Now let's look at layer 3, the 5 regional internet registrars. The distributors focus on allocating, giving out, and assigning IP resources and domains. There are 5 regional internet registrars. ARIN, which covers Canada, the United States, and parts of the Caribbean. LACNet, which covers Latin America and the Caribbean. AFRINIC, which covers Africa and the Indian Ocean. RIPE NCC, which covers Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. And APNEC, which covers Asia and the Oceania. The regional internet registers are responsible for the regional management of internet number resources. Each maintains a regional specific WHOIS database that contains information about the organizations that hold the resources. Layer 4 are the routing providers of IP resources. These are the pathway providers and companies that own and operate and sell access to the internet's backbone infrastructure and services. They consist of a 3-tiered network. A Tier 1 network is an IP network that can reach every other network on the internet, solely via settlement-free interconnection, also known as peering. A Tier 2 network is a network that peers for free with some networks, but still purchases IP transit or pays for peering to reach some portions of the internet. A Tier 3 network is a network that solely purchases transit or peering from other upstream networks to participate on the internet. In Layer 4 of the cyber ecosystem, we are primarily focused on the Tier 1 and Tier 2 pathway or routing providers, because they are the largest backbone providers and also provide access to last mile ISPs, Tier 3, which we will discuss in Layer 5 of the cyber ecosystem. The global internet is a collection of separate but interconnected networks, each of which is managed as a single administrative domain called an autonomous system. The binding glue of the internet is that autonomous systems share a standard internet protocol addressing scheme. The Global Border Gateway Protocol is a routing framework that allows these networks to interconnect with each other. So let's focus on the Tier 3 last mile ISP providers. They're primarily engaged in delivering internet access to the end users and focused on local businesses and consumer market conditions. Their coverage is limited to specific countries or subregions such as metro areas. They deliver access through cable, DSL, fiber, satellite, or wireless access networks. They provide a blurred portfolio of services such as hardware, software, applications, networks, edge computing, VoIP, data, security, cloud, telecom, backhaul text services, and internet and web service access. There has also been a digital transformation from an older Tier 3 network to a new, more diverse network, including DNS providers as well as content delivery network providers like Dyn, Cloudflare, Google, AWS, OpenDNS, and more. Unfortunately, the use of this ubiquitous infrastructure, resellable services, and lack of accountability and transparency allows for the cyber criminals Layer 7 to stage, launch, and execute malicious attacks. So when we look back and review what we've learned so far, we can see how the first 5 layers of the cyber ecosystem impact cybercrime and cybersecurity. In this example, we can see the Layer 1 challenges of IP resources by the nature of the adversary to leverage the ubiquitous nature of the internet. They undermine the mission of the stakeholders of IP resources by abusing the openness, interoperability, resiliency, and security of the internet. They misuse the allocation and assignment of IP resources provided by the Layer 3 distributors of IP resources. They violate the terms of service provided by the Layer 4 pathway providers of IP resources. And finally, they leverage the lack of accountability and anonymity in all of the blurred service offerings offered by the network service providers, last mile ISPs. In Layer 6, the users of Internet Protocol resources, I would like to simply discuss how the attackers, the abusers of Internet Protocol resources, access your system. Although there are plenty of definitions and frameworks, such as NIST, MITRE, and the Cyber Kill Chain, I would like to discuss the 6 simple ways in which they access your environment. To recap, the last mile internet service providers, level 5, provide you the access to the internet. Once you're exposed to the internet is when attackers or abusers of IP resources try to leverage one of these 6 initial attack vectors. The 6 initial attack vectors are a browser, a link, an attachment, which can be a file, program, or code, an insider, scanning, reconnaissance, and exploitation, which is a triad, and social engineering. Your browser lets you view pages from various sources, communicates to web servers, and by their nature are often widely accessible to the internet. They are a heavily targeted segment and pathway of the attack surface. When we look at a link, since links are unidirectional, meaning connecting 2 different entities, they serve as an interface or a target for attackers. An attachment can be a file, program, or code. It can be used to deliver a dangerous payload of malware in multiple ways across the attack surface. Next is an insider. Although that insider is a person, that person can be used or process unauthorized access to your system. Scanning, reconnaissance, and exploitation, the triad, looks to sweep or scan the surface, observe what they find, and exploit and gain any authority that they can. And finally, social engineering, which is a cross-cutting attack expanded in the cyber world and utilized to take advantage of people, processes, and technology. In Layer 7, we have the abusers of IP resources. They can be defined as cyber criminals, hacktivists, insiders, competitors, nation-state actors. They hold the structural advantage because cybercrime is not officially recognized in many countries. There are differences in international, regional, and local policies. There's decentralized coordination around cybersecurity. There's a lack of information sharing and collaboration. And the cybercrime infrastructure has a disposable front end and a stable back end. So what do we do about it? How do we stop them? In Layer 8, we have the defenders of IP resources. Unfortunately, they all have different priorities, and their sharing and collaborative efforts must improve. The defenders include government and intelligence agencies that are geopolitically focused, law enforcement who work to prosecute, however in silos, cybersecurity firms who will sell you any number of product or service offerings, private sector and businesses whose primary concerns are driven by profit, the bottom line, and return on investment, and many other key players, including emergency response teams, researchers, academia, non-government organizations, and the private sector, the general public, who play a key role in cybersecurity. Layer 9A consists of the countermeasures the defenders utilize, and they consist of technology, process, and people, security products, security services, as well as governance, risk, and compliance security measures. In Level 9B, we have the responders of IP resources. Responding to a cyber attack involves 3 main elements. 1, getting the right people involved and coordinating your efforts to be successful ahead of time. The second is containing the problem, being in containment mode during a crisis. The third, collecting and reporting the facts, having good evidence to support your findings and find the root cause of the attack. And finally, level 10 is around security versus privacy. In every layer of the cyber ecosystem, you must balance security and privacy.